Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited to have you all here for the third installment of the Permission to Do You in Your Marketing. And today we have a wonderful, wonderful panel who is going to be sharing with us about how we can show up more authentically as ourselves when it comes specifically to making connections. So oftentimes people think marketing and networking are very different things. And when it comes to how we show up with our personal brand as the anchor, they're really not all that different. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to have each of our panel members do a very quick introduction of themselves, but we also are going to have time for Q&A at the end. So if you guys have any questions as any of our panelists are sharing, if you're on Zoom, please feel free to post it in the chat. If you guys are watching on our Facebook live stream, you guys can post in the Facebook comments as well. I am watching that out of the corner of my eye, and we will make sure that we get all of your questions answered for you. So as an introduction for everybody today, I'm going to rotate through all of our panelists, and if you can share with us who you are, where you're from, what you're all about. I know Terra's gonna, Terra makes me do where you're from. That's Terra's question. And I would love for you guys to share one thing that a story from your past about when it felt really great, when you made a connection based on your personal brand. So I'll give you guys a moment to ruminate on that. And maybe we'll start with Terra just because I used Terra's question. So go ahead, Terra.
I'm so glad that you like to use my question, and I hope lots of people do. So my name is Terra Argo, and I am based in Norman, Oklahoma, which is in the central part of the United States. And I am all about people, connections, networking, the human interaction, and I believe it is foundational. I was just trying to think of like a time that I've connected. It's literally, and Tracy, I've talked about this for years, and I think most of you that I have spoken with, like it is so natural for me. I can't imagine not making a connection and not just really representing my personal brand. So I can't specifically say a specific story, but I am all about people and connecting people from across the world, because, you know, when you put all the pieces together and bring the right people together, really nothing can stop you. So that is really my love, and helping people learn how to build those diverse and robust networks, but only through genuine and authentic relationships.
This is true. I have not known Terra to connect not using her personal brand.
No, but I'm so grateful that you would invite me today. And thank you so much for allowing me to be here with these other wonderful panelists.
Yeah, thank you, Terra. So let's hop over to Debbie. Debbie is representing the UK. Debbie, tell us a little bit more about you.
Okay, so thank you, Tracy, and lovely to see all of you here this evening in the UK, or whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. I think this is so cool that with this, we're able to cross borders and just connect with so many different people like Terra, and I have had a one-to-one with Terra. I absolutely love people. I love bringing my personality. This is how I connect. I'm quite a bubbly person. I have a very diverse cultural background. So I love sort of bringing all that and letting people know, you know, for example, I was born in Zimbabwe, where I grew up. I live in London, in the UK, where I have lived for the past 32 years. But my heart belongs to Sweden because my partner is Swedish, and my children went to school in Sweden. So it's kind of a little sort of mix of, you know, great cultures going on. And we bring all of these cultures into our home. I bring them into my business. I have clients from Sweden. I actually have more clients from the US. And I just connect by exactly as Tracy and Terra said. I just absolutely show up. I'm a virtual assistant, also an online business manager. And so I just hope that I will attract clients who have the same values as I do, who have the same passion as I do, who come with integrity into their businesses, and we have that common ground already. So the 7 clients I do have are just the most wonderful people ever. It kind of isn't even like I'm working. It's my joyous time, really. And yeah, that's kind of what I do, and that's me. I'll tell you about Fika later if we get to talk some more.
Yes, we need Debbie to teach us about Fika. But I just want to share this little comment that Sheila was sharing. I'll vouch for Debbie's personality shining through. So, and I mean, I invited you guys all here for a reason today because I believe that you show up with your personal brand leading the way. And so I think that that's so wonderful, and something that Debbie mentioned that I want you guys to keep top of mind when you're doing these types of activities is that her 7 clients, or however X many clients as she goes through her business, don't feel like work. It just feels like you get to show up and hang out with your friends. And that is the coolest thing that you can do when it comes to work. I know Terra's actually in my mastermind, so she can share about this if she would like to, but I feel like that's what my mastermind is like. We show up and there's all of these people who are just like out for each other, and we're all international, so we can't hang out in the same coffee shop, but we can hang out together on a Zoom once a week and just find all this common ground and these great ways to embrace our personal brand. So it's really not just, that's kind of where it ties into the marketing play, right? Is that it's not a tactic. I wrote a social media post about this last week, is that personal branding isn't a marketing tactic, right? It's about being you and showing up as that whenever you do that. All right, let's throw it over to my good friend Dan Roth for some introductions from the West Coast.
Hey everyone, as Tracy mentioned, my name is Dan Roth. I actually grew up on the East Coast in New Jersey. That's where I identify with, as opposed to California. You know, I spent 15 years between media and project management, and everything that I kind of do starting from being from Jersey is talking to people. I have the gift of gab, if you will, that has been passed down from my mother and her mother before there. So it's always been very natural for me. Right now, I'm well known for my networking skills within the LinkedIn community. I run a job connection for people. I have my hand in a lot of different pools, so to speak. So if you need something, I'm basically that guy that can get it for you. I'm thinking of Shawshank Redemption right now. You know, the great thing for me, though, as far as giving you a story about when networking, and I don't like the term authentic. I think it's getting used too much. I prefer to call myself real and raw, because what you see is what you get. But through my efforts within the women's empowerment community and within the job search community, what's been really nice is that I get messages every day from people saying, thank you so much. Your words meant whatever. I was crying because your post expressed something I didn't expect guys to express. But then the other side of it is I get to meet really, really cool people like Tracy, which is the one I'm supposed to say since I'm right here. But also, to give you an example, this morning I was on a phone call and I get a message from Lauren Grief, who's like one of my heroes on here. And she says to me, she's like, hi, hey, what's up? Hey, can you schedule some time to meet with you? Of course I will. So she's like, I'm like, it would be my honor. She's like, no, it's my honor. Seriously? So it's been a really fun experience. I look forward to providing whatever tips I can for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I just shared, Dan is Red from Shawshank Redemption, Morgan Freeman. I was while you were saying that, I'm like, oh yeah, like Red from Shawshank Redemption. And I also wanted to share, you mentioned the gift of gab. When I was pregnant, I was in Ireland with my in-laws and we were at Blarney Castle, and you gotta kiss the Blarney Stone, right? Like that's what you gotta do. But my mother-in-law was like, you don't need the gift of gab. You already have that. And I was like, you're right. I do. I'm gonna kiss the stone anyway. We'll see what happens. It didn't hamper my gift of gab at all. All right, round us out there, Dennett.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Dennett Edwards. I'm the founder of Corona Days Professional Development Group. And what I do is I help people see the power that they already have in their hands, hearts, souls, and minds to recognize their own greatness. And I am from New York City, but I live in Baltimore, Maryland now. And I don't have one story. I think that I've always just been me. And people either just were attracted to me or they were not. But one of the reasons I connect with people is I always see something in someone that no one else sees. So, and people know that, or people appreciate that I've seen something and helped them to see it themselves. Right. And then they share that message with others. And so people just come to me. So that's kind of been my thing for over 20 years. That has been my thing. Actually, over 27 years now. I'm getting old.
I think that's just a wonderful thing. And actually, I'd love to have, so I want to encourage our participants here, if you guys are watching, if you have any questions about what that looks like, because what we have here is a panel of people who are very comfortable showing up as their authentic selves. And what I would love for us to be able to answer is if you guys have any questions about that or any experiences you've had where it felt really hard for you to show up as your authentic self, and we'll get all these genius brains on that for your perspective. So please feel free to share that. In the meantime, I want to play off of what Dennett said about seeing things in other people that they don't necessarily see, because I've heard Terra say that before, and I've heard Dan say that before as well. And just from what I know about Debbie, I'm sure she's doing it as well. So I would love for you guys to share, if you have an example, and we don't have to go in a rotation, but if you guys have an example, just pop your hand and we'll hop over to you in terms of, can you give us an example of an interaction that you had with somebody where they just took away that, oh, I'm kind of, yeah, I'm actually pretty awesome. Just because you showed up to listen to them and to share. Does anybody have a story on that front that they would love to share? Dennett, I don't know. Dan does. Okay, hit it, Dan.
Honestly, I was just going because I didn't see any other hands raised. This is one of the things that I've really specialized in throughout my career, and that's helping people that don't necessarily think that they have a voice and making them feel better about themselves. As somebody that considers themselves a storyteller and has written books and done all this kind of stuff, I'm not going to give you a specific example as far as names go, but what I could say is that very recently I was in Clubhouse and there was a professional woman there, and she was talking about how she has no problem putting herself out there, but she was saying, well, what about my story would resonate? And here's my thing, and this is if there's one piece of advice you're going to get from me today, this is what I want to be that little gold nugget. It doesn't matter whether you reach 1 million people, 500,000, 1,000, or one person. Regardless of what your voice is, it's going to resonate with somebody out there. And once it does that, and it makes that impact, then that's significant both in your life as well as their life. And that's something to learn from. Now, as far as how you get that story out there, there's a lot of different ways. One of the tips I give is look through your Facebook photo album. You may not think that you have an interesting story, but take a look at those photos. If you find one that you feel emotionally attached to, there's a story there, because you have that inherent emotion that comes when you watch a movie, whether it's horror or whatever. So you pick that up and write the story about that picture. And once you've done that, that's going to ease your way into learning and growing and identifying really how to share yourself. And then from there, you take it a little bit further and you start writing on your own. You've brainstormed and take it one step at a time. And eventually what you have is a brand. And that's really cool. So to all you out there, please don't be afraid of it. We all have our story to share. Thank you.
I love that, Dan. And it really is true. And I find I do a lot of brand voice work as well. And so a lot of people have their story, but they're not sure how to tell it. Or like you said, like, who wants to listen to this. And something that I always share is that the only thing you need to say is what you need to say. What is your heart telling you to say, right? There are so many things that we experience in our lives. And I know that everybody has those times where you're like, oh, like, I can't, this makes me so angry, or this like makes me so happy. And you just have to share the things. And then we get into this over editing zone, especially when it comes to written social media. Is just like, oh, you write it and then you're like, oh, maybe people don't care about that, so maybe I'll change this. And then by the time you're finished editing it, you're like, all of your passion is gone. And so like really connecting to those feelings. And I don't know if you guys know, because I'm sure like all of you follow at least one of us on social media. And there is an energy that you get from people who just show up and do them, right? That's why I named this series this way. Like they just show up and they be themselves. And the amount of mental calories that I'm sure this panel spends on what other people are going to think about what they say is very small, right? And here's the thing, I want you guys to think about this too. And you guys, panelists, like pop up your names. You got things you want to add on as well. We're just having a conversation at this point until questions start coming in. When you have those things you want to say, and you don't have to have, like, you're not thinking about what someone else is going to say, or whether my English is right, or any of those things, you can just say it and get it out there. And this is the example that Dan is talking about, right? That's when your voice has the greatest opportunity to make an impact on another human, because you are there, you're raw and real, and that is what people connect to. We're not robots, right? Robots are the types of things that respond to an algorithm, not humans. Humans respond to emotion and passion and frustration. And they're not, I have a lady in my mastermind who shared this story about how her first language is not English, it's German. And so she gets always a little bit nervous when she's writing her posts because they're all in English. And she just wrote this one, and I don't know, the spacing wasn't great and like whatever. And she was like, I got all of the response for this because I just like wrote it. I just wrote it and told my story. And we always think that no one wants to hear it, but there are people out there who need it and who want to listen, right? Who want to be given the space to be able to share their story. And that's what we're doing too. Dennett.
Yeah, so I used to have this quote on my AOL. That's how old I am. And it says something like the greatest thing we could do for someone is to hear their story. And that is something that I do. And I did it naturally because I'm nosy. You know, since from a kid, I love stories. So I always wanted to hear people's stories, even though I talk a lot. I listen a lot as well. And so I tell people all the time, I mean, and I say this at least 3 times a week as I'm speaking to people who are going to come present to our group, the Corona Days, is consider our group, consider your audience, and then sit back and be reflective about your own story and your life, and then you'll come with the best story for us, right? So if you know who your audience is, and you can flip that onto anything. If you're selling something, if you're selling yourself as a job seeker, right? So for the people who come talk to us, they have amazing career journeys. And I say, well, think about if you're going to come talk to a group of people, over 1,000 people who are underemployed or unemployed or just unfulfilled in their careers, what's the story that you have inside of you that you believe would resonate with those people? And people who tell me I don't have a story to tell, once they do that, they come back and they wow us. So that is a tip that I have for everyone, right? No matter if it's content creation, if you're going to have a talk, whatever it is, if you're selling yourself, if you know who you're selling yourself to, you understand that employer, you understand that potential client or customer, just think about the story that you have inside of you that would resonate with that person. And I too, Dan, I do not like the word authentic. It's the buzzword. I don't like it, but I just say don't compromise you in that story, right? Don't feel you have to compromise yourself in that story, and then you'll be fine. So that's what I would add. Thank you.
Can I just add to that, Dennett and Dan? Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so important to be, as Dan says, real and raw. And kind of that brings me to a little sort of how can I call it, a Swedish culture that is totally a Swedish tradition, rather, that's completely embedded in Swedish culture. It's kind of the buzzword here in the UK now, because we're having little breakout times, and what it is during your busy day, you sort of down tools, you put your phone away. Obviously we have to use Zoom now because of current circumstances, but you put your phone away and you just connect. You don't talk about work. You connect with people you don't know. You talk about life, kids, dreams, passions, feelings, TV programs or series, anything at all. And just with that little tradition that's called fika, it's spelled F-I-K-A, pronounced F-E-E-K-A-H, fika, you get to know and connect in such a raw and real way with people you've never known before, never met before. It's a big thing in workplaces and department stores and schools and shops and homes. And it's just a way of keeping it real and talking about yourself, telling your story, but also listening to their story. And with that, you sort of form a deeper relationship that leads on to so many things. My clients have all come out of fika just because I had a fika with them. Pretty cool.
And I kind of want, can I round that out? So,
yes, please.
So for me, what I tell people is to fall in love with learning about other people. Like that should be that's that whole genuineness. Like if you truly love people, then you can fall in love with finding out about them, whether that's their passion, whether that's, about their families. Find a way to connect with them. So that is what I've done my entire career, my whole life. I can literally travel across the state of Oklahoma. My husband's like, we're going to go somewhere. For instance, we were traveling one time. We stopped at a restaurant like an hour and a half from here. And of course, I ran into somebody I went to high school with. He was like, we can't go anywhere without you knowing someone. But you can be that way because you're genuinely interested in other people and helping them and figuring out a way to connect the pieces so that they can become successful as well. And a lot of things times too, 3 things that I really tell people to do. When you're going into a networking opportunity, always bring your listening ears. That should be the number 1 thing. 2 is a pen and paper. And then 3 would be just genuineness. But again, that goes back to caring about people and learning about people. And so those are some of my tips. And when I was in corporate, I would have some of my colleagues come up to me and they would say, how can you talk to those board members? And I said, well, they put their clothes on just like I do. They are no different than me. So I would find something that I had in common with them. Like if it was, a lot of times it's the lake here in Oklahoma. So we would all have cabins on the lake. So I would always ask them that every single time. And they became friends with me because they knew I genuinely cared and I actually asked about them. And so it's really important to find those types of opportunities and then always use that throughout life.
So great, you guys. I'm just going to share some of the things that are happening in the comments because there's good things in here too. And I want people getting the replay to be able to hear them. So Sheila is sharing, I was taught that overthinking is stinking. Kind of like that. It's got a nice ring to it. So I wanted to share that with everybody. There's a whole conversation here about warts. And I'm not sure where that is going, but Dan took it in a very interesting, different direction than Sheila meant it, I believe. Sheila is also sharing that Debbie's Clubhouse Fika is a wonderful event to join. So if you guys are on Clubhouse, definitely look for that because you get to hang out with some of these great people. Debbie shared magic happens when you genuinely connect with people. I think that's kind of what we're experiencing here right now. Ryan is saying, be an aggressive listener. Best advice from Dale Carnegie. I'm a big Dale Carnegie fan, so I love someone else quoted Dale Carnegie before I did. I was going to say genuine and like, now I'm going to screw it up. Become genuinely interested in other people is one of Dale Carnegie's golden principles. And it just has, for me, it has served me very, very well. And I think, so I would love to talk about this because we have one question, but I want to just address this one first. In terms of becoming interested in other people. And maybe if you guys, again, like if you have other questions, if you're like, how can I show up making connections on LinkedIn? Or how can I show up making connections in a coffee chat? Or if you guys who are listening live have any of those specific questions, pop them in the comments and we'll definitely address those specifically. But when it comes to like being genuinely caring about just kind of like showing up that way, is there tips you guys have on like things that you do before a coffee chat or before you post on social media that kind of gets you in the zone of your Debbiness or your Terra-ness? Go for it, Dan.
You are or you're not. I mean, that's not to drop a truth bomb or anything, but you're either caring or you're not caring. And, you know, if you're somebody you can't force yourself to be interested in people. And anybody that tells you different, I don't know what they're doing. Good people care about people. That's just the way I look at it. So when you come into something, you may have ways that you want to tailor how you're thinking about talking to them, as far as active listening and as far as what you're listening for, but you're either going in and who you are as a person is going to speak to it. So, you know, I hate to be that guy, but that's kind of how it is. No,
and I think I love that because it doesn't always have to be complicated, right? Like you care or you don't care. And this is the interesting thing too. And I would encourage you guys to just think about this for a moment in terms of a conversation where you went in and you did care versus a conversation that you went in and you maybe didn't. I don't know if our panel has an example of that. But even for me, like I remember this relationship that I had in the corporate world, and one of the companies that we partnered with, the guy who ran the company was very aggressive, very in your face. And every time I had a conversation with him, I was like, oh, he's going to ask me for something I don't want to do. And I like went into the conversation that way. And I absolutely wasn't listening. I was not trying to build a relationship with him. I was just trying to get through the call. And I don't know if you guys who have been in corporate have experienced something similar, but actually after I went through the Dale Carnegie training, I did the Leadership for Managers course, and there was a page in the binder about active listening. And so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna like go into this conversation and all I'm gonna do is listen. I'm not gonna defend, I'm not gonna anything, I'm just going to listen to him. And it was completely different. Like my experience of him was completely different. And so I think this is what Dan is saying. All those historic calls, I was going in and I was like, I wasn't caring. I wasn't caring what was wrong with him today. I wasn't caring what was worrying him. I was only caring about myself. And once I switched that to just say like, hey, I wonder if I could actually learn something about Neil today.
Yeah, and
it was just
Tracy,
so crazy.
Sorry, just to clarify, what you were asking was about a coffee chat. And in coffee chat, there's a very clear delineation that there was an offer made to join and accepted. So you're wanting to do this, right? And that's why I said that there's the genuine and not. It's not like you're going into meeting with somebody that you don't want to, if that makes sense.
I think it all goes down for me to knowing who my audience is. I'll go back to that, right? So if I know who it is, and then I know, so in your situation, it sounds like this is someone who is probably over you, a superior, Tracy, right? So I know that this is someone who is superior to me. I know that they have pressure points and they need something. And so then I'm going into that situation being an active listener, trying to figure out what it is they need from me or want from me. And so this is again where I always say, like, know your audience, know who it is that you're connecting with. And if you don't know them, then the goal should be going in to learn them so that you can then see, how do I fit in here, right? And you may fit that you might be someone that they actually want something from, right? So you may be in their mind, you may be the person with the upper hand, but you wouldn't know that, if we're not listening and we're not trying to determine, okay, what is it? So it's like, it's active listening with the goal of understanding what the person wants, and then figuring out, is there a way that I can satisfy that need, right? Or even if do I want to, right? Do I care to satisfy that need? Is there a situation where this is not someone that I want to do business with or connect with, or so I'm not the person for you, right? But if we're clear on if we're clear on the audience, we're clear on why we're there, right? So some people just connect and connect, have a coffee chat's the coffee chat, right? So, but if I'm clear on what it is that I want from that interaction, then the next step for me is I want to understand what you want, and if I can meet you there. So hope that helps.
I love that. Sorry guys, my internet connection's a little unstable, but I think
Tracy, I do want to I want to say something too about when I was in my professional career. I noticed that when I would have, when it was maybe my superior, I noticed that I would go in and I would get to the point. Like there wasn't near as much small talk. I was there to get whatever it was done, and to stay super focused. So I really did. I'm like Dennett, I knew who my audience was and I knew exactly what we were both there to accomplish. So I think that is important. But I want to say, like, what I do when I go into any networking opportunity, it doesn't matter if it's in person or if it's online, I am immediately, the very first question, if any of you guys have met me, or when you do meet me, I'm going to ask you, where are you from? It's very important to me. I think that tells a lot about a person. And so as I'm talking to those people, I'm actively listening. I'm looking for things like, is this person going to be a friend? Is this person going to be a potential collaborative partner? Or would they be a referral partner? So the whole time I'm thinking, who is in my network that can help them get to where they're going? And so that's how I enter into I have a purpose for all my calls and everything that I do in regards to connections and networking. And so I would encourage you to come to some sort of a network with a purpose, to where you know what you're there to do, but you're also serving, potentially two people within your network, because you're serving that person there, but you're also serving somebody else that you could potentially connect them to. And so that's a little bit of the strategy that I like to use. So for any of those that want to connect in that level, absolutely reach out. And, I think it's so super important.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And Terra, you said the word a couple of times, serving. And I think that's one of the big things that this all comes back to, right? Is that a lot of time people, when they're networking, they have a goal of selling, right? And when you have a goal of selling, then you don't come into it necessarily with the mindset of caring, right? I shared this with a lady on Facebook the other day, the concept of serving versus selling. And she was confused. And I was like, oh, I'm confused. Why you're confused, but let's talk about it. But there's this, when you show up for a coffee chat, or if you're in the service industry and you do discovery calls or clarity calls or any of those free connection type of calls, like that's your opportunity to show up and help a person. This is someone else saying to you, like, hey, I would like to get to know you for one reason or another. And I'm like, oh, I would love to get to know you as well. I shared this the other day because I have a connection, a LinkedIn strategist who always says that you should never just connect with people because you feel their vibe. And I do that all the time. I'm like, oh, I'm feeling your vibe. I feel like we should chat. And I had someone reach out to do that to me the other day. And I was like, I'm already your biggest fan because that's exactly what I do, right? And that's just people like not being afraid to show up and say, hey, I like you. I don't know what this is gonna be, but do you want to have a chat? I'm like, yeah. And that's just because the goal, why you're showing up is to connect with another human. If your goal is to show up to sell another human, you don't even know if these people need what you have yet. So like just whoa there on the sales. That doesn't necessarily mean like once you're in a conversation, you can't talk about the things that you do or the services that you have. That just means you talk about it when it makes sense, if it makes sense, right? I've bought things from coffee chats before because what that person did, I absolutely needed almost immediately, right? So like that's super handy, but that's also like not the reason why I had the conversation. And the reason why I could trust that person so quickly is because neither of us went into the conversation that way. Debbie, you have something to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, absolutely. I agree, you know, to kind of when you are connecting with people, to have that listening ear, as well as, you know, bringing, as Dan, I love Dan's phrase, raw and real self to the table, because at the end of the day, whether you're selling a service, a product, people actually buy people. I've had a client who didn't even need a VA at the time, but because we really got on, we just completely connected on another level, and she made it happen. And you know, here we are months down the line. So I really believe that people buy people. So that's what they're looking at before they even look at your services or products.
Totally agree with that. So I want to go to the questions because there's a really interesting one here from William, and I would like to hear what you guys have to say. So William is asking, how can I show up with different generations? I'm thinking specifically of millennials. I don't have a particular problem here, but any information helps. So what if you're looking at people who are in kind of like that different age demographic maybe than you? Any specific advice?
I can chime in here, Tracy.
Yeah, go for it.
Just because I'm a mother of a millennial. So William, the way I tackle this is I kind of get on her level. So I have to do a little research and find out what is it that makes them sort of tick? What is it that they are, you know, interested in at this moment or at this time? And sort of, you know, get in on the conversation and show empathy, understanding, you know, and just really try to get down to whatever it is they are about. And that usually gets you far, because you sort of get the comment like, oh, I didn't know you were interested in that. And it sort of sets the tone. So give it a go and see how that works.
I think that's great. Yeah, go ahead, Terra.
No, I was going to say that's exactly what I would tell them as well, because for me, I don't look at the generations, but I do find, again, I find something in common with whatever age group that I'm speaking to. So if it's someone from maybe that's an elderly person, I always find something that I can connect with them. Same with a millennial. It doesn't really matter, but I would do a little bit of research to figure out everybody has a passion and everybody has things that make them tick. So as soon as you can figure that out, it's a lot easier to connect with them.
And I think as another thing I'd like to frame here in terms of the concept of research is that you can learn a lot of those things by having those interactions with the people, right? So I think that there's a lot to be said there. And Tiedra is actually just sharing, as a millennial, it's seeking to understand. I think often we forget that we're all still humans. And one of our biggest human needs is to be understood by other people. And so when people show up and say like, hey, I'm here to listen and to try and understand you, and like maybe by nature, my surroundings, my experiences haven't put me in the same place. And I really would like to understand that. Go ahead, Dennett.
Yeah, I'll go back to the listening with the goal of understanding, right? So, and I do well with millennials and even, you know, that funky age the preteen, teen. I do very well, and I don't have children. I do very well with that preteen up to the millennials. And I want to believe it's because I listen with the goal of understanding. And then my communication is the same way I communicate with you. So my communication is not, so I'm not speaking down, I'm speaking with them, right? So we are at the same level. So I don't need to, make them feel that I am at a higher level, even when I'm being nice or gracious, so it is very clear communication. And I've often received the response from my family members that they love the way I deal with their children, right? Because it's the way that I deal with the children, and of all ages, right? That they're like, wow, I just love the way you speak to them. Like they're people. They are little people, right? And then they are middle-aged people, right? And so that goes on, and it really is, like I said, it just all goes back to me with the goal of just listening to understand, and then I can frame my communication from that. Yeah.
So if we've learned anything from Dennett today, guys, it's that you should listen.
And I'll also say this, I'm a master connector. So it just comes very natural to me that when people are talking to me, I already know 3 people to connect them with. And I do the same thing with the millennials. I do the same, or if it's not people, it's books that they would like, or it's a program that would be beneficial to them. And it usually works very well, and people really appreciate being connected to what they need, whether it is other people or they really appreciate that. And so that helps me as well to connect with people, is connecting them to other people and resources.
And hi everyone, I would just add, and maybe this is because I've been doing a lot of research and studying up on this, but to be mindful and to be truly present when you're, whether in a group meeting, one-on-one, or whatever the situation. And I understand the irony as I just came off of just put my video back on, so I totally get that. But just to be present with people, I think that would help the relationship grow exponentially. And I say that I've just been doing a lot of research on consciousness and mindfulness and meditation. And so it's very top of mind right now. So anyway, so that was it. So thank you.
No, thank you, Jim, for popping in with that, because I think that that's a wonderful piece. And I think maybe sometimes our master connectors are just kind of live in that zone, so they forget to specifically call that out. But if you think about any interactions that you have in your day, and since we all have handheld devices, it's actually become much, much worse, right? Like people are always trying to do 2 things at a time. And now we don't really have restaurants open where I'm at, but I have like you see people and they're all just sitting there on their phones. No one's talking to each other. Like, what is that? I don't understand. And so that mindfulness, and again, like whether if you have children, I would challenge you to do that. My son is turning 3 today, and like he takes his head, he actually will take my head and turn it towards him and be like, I'm right here, right? Like, he's very clear that he needs me to be like mindfully present in whatever fan project he's working on at the moment. And like, that makes a big difference. And then it doesn't have to be a huge amount of time either, right? Like 5 minutes of mindfully spent time can mean way more to somebody in a business interaction, in a personal interaction, than 30 minutes, an hour of distracted time, right? Like, so thank you, Jim, so much for sharing that, because that's definitely, definitely true. Okay, I'm going to pop through some more of the comments. Tiedra is also sharing that it's important to realize that all millennials are different, just like every person, right? So yes, we can group people into age categories, but we're still all individual humans, right? And if we could come at our conversations from the perspective of learning about the individual, then I think that is going to be wonderful. And it's something to watch too when you consider market research, right? Talking to one millennial does not mean that what works for them works for all millennials. Let's see, very true, Dennett, when we're talking about being at the same level, makes millennials feel part of the connection. And I would say that makes anybody feel part of a connection, being at the same level. And something that I have experienced too lately is that like people are looking for community, right? They're not looking to have a hierarchy built around them. They're looking to have a community built around them. And when you're making connections, you have the opportunity to build that community. And I know actually Terra was even sharing with me this morning about how the joy that other people get from you being able to connect them to other people. And it took you 2 minutes, right? Like that's an amazing contribution to be able to have to other people. Oh, Sheila's leaving. Thanks for coming, Sheila. Thank you for all your chats. So great too. Okay, so there's also one more question, and this one is a little bit different. So we'll see if Dennett's answer is to listen. But Alishba is asking when you're talking about like looking at your audience and what you would say, do you need to quote unquote craft a story? So I'd be really interested, maybe Dennett, if you want to start, because that came from your conversation way back.
I don't necessarily craft a story. So now if I am preparing a presentation, yeah. But just in general, no. So again, I'm nosy, so I want to know, right? And once I know, then I say, oh, so now I understand that, then you would be interested in this, right? And so let's talk about this. I don't sell anything either, by the way, guys. So I don't sell anything, but I get a lot of business, right? I make a lot of money and I don't sell anything, right? I sell people, helping people. That's what I sell, and it works, right? So people come and they give my group all kind of free stuff to help them. And then people just started to say, hey, can I pay you to do X, Y, Z? And I said, okay, sure, right? So I don't sell anything. There's no website to book it. But in answer to that question, no, I don't craft my story in advance when I'm going into a networking situation, when I'm going to connect with someone. I also read people's bios. So if it's a LinkedIn situation, I read the bios and I know what I'm interested in. But now I want to find out, why are you interested in me? Right? So and oftentimes I start with, hey, how can I help you? Right on the Zoom. Hey, how can I help you, Debbie? Right? And I just let people talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And then once they finish talking, I say, hey, well, did you know that so-and-so does this? Or are you connected with so-and-so and so-and-so? Or, and then it just folds from there. And even it's funny, I had a recent situation, I don't want to take all the time, but a recent situation with someone, I was connecting with someone to see if they would come in our group and present, a really big person. And we got onto it. I said, start telling me about yourself. And I end up doing counseling. And we never talk about doing anything for the group. And I end up doing a whole counseling strategy session, not mental health, but like about career and the person's business. But it was just so funny because I think many people are waiting for someone to say, how can I help you? Or tell me about yourself. And they don't get it, especially the higher they go in their careers. They're not getting people who are going to say that to them and be the listening ear. So I hope that answers the question. It was Alishba,
yeah.
Alishba.
Did you see how she threw in the listening ear at the end? We got the listen in there. No, thank you, Dennett, because I think that is a really important point too, right? Because I don't know how many of you guys have experienced this too, but if you go into a conversation and someone else will be like, how can I help you? The first time I was asked that, once I was an entrepreneur, I had never been asked that before. And then when someone asked me, I was like, oh, am I supposed to have an answer to that question? And I was like, I didn't have an answer. And then you're just like, I don't know. And then I was like, oh, but there's so much help that I can use all the time, right? There's also this there's still a little bit of a stigma associated with asking for help, right? And I've had lots of people now where I ask them like, oh, how can I help you? How can I support you? And they're just like, I think they're waiting for like a sale to drop after that. They're just like, oh, if I tell her how I need help, then she's going to be like, you can buy this program, blah, blah, blah. And like, quite honestly, I will do that. If there is something I have that can help support you, or someone else I know has something that can help support you, I'm going to share it, because I also believe in helping people, and me keeping something that can help someone a secret isn't helping people. But I find that there is a little bit of a reservation on that front, and people being able, like, saying that this is the help that they need. Have the rest of the panel members experienced? Dan is going, yeah, that's the thing.
You know, I'll tell you right off the bat, like, this is something I dealt with today. So I refer a lot of people to a lot of people today, and I have a lot in common when it comes to that. And I had referred somebody to a coach friend of mine, who I'm very close with. And she messaged me. She's like, do you have Venmo? No, we're not doing that. No, she's like, Dan, I'd be happy to. And finally I had to give in and be like, okay, yeah, I'll accept it, but it's hard for me to accept, because altruistically, like, you're not doing these things, or at least I'm not, in order to gain that. But then again, being unemployed, I'm like, I better, my wife's gonna kill me. So it all comes into play.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, it's actually interesting, because I know like Ryan is on here today, and he is all about sales. And we will have a session about sales, so stay tuned for that one coming up. But that's the thing, right? Like, I think a lot of people who especially are what a lot of other people call heart-centered service providers, right? Like, I'm not doing this to get paid. I'm doing this because I have a skill that can help you, and you need help in this arena. And at the same time, then there's this kind of, oh, like, should I charge for that? And this is why so many service providers are still underpriced, is they're just like, oh, I just want to be able to help, right? And you can show up to help. And just like Dennett shared, right? Like, at some point, someone's going to, okay, I want your time to specifically do this for me, and I'm willing to pay you for it. Okay, awesome. I can help you with that, right? Like, you don't have to sell, but it doesn't have to change how you show up, right? Like, you can show up and serve, and if that has enough value for people, then they randomly transfer you money, just like happened to Dan, right? So, like, that's something I just want to remind you guys of too. Does anybody else want to address the question about crafting a story in terms of like coffee chats, or any advice?
I'll go. So I'm like Dan though too, that I am very real and raw, and I don't like to script anything. That doesn't matter what I do in my life. I want it to be so natural. I want to go in there with the expectation that I want to learn about that person, and I'm going to pull that information out that I'm looking for. And then I'm going to be able to act on whatever it is. So I don't script anything. And that's just a personal thing for me. Because I feel like, and Tracy's heard me say this, I get real excited. I don't like to be in a box, and I don't want to be in a box. And I feel like that really limits me. So I just choose not to do it that way.
Yeah. And one thing that I would share, and I years ago was a Toastmaster. And when it comes to public speaking, people have the same question, right? Like, how much of this do I need to craft it, script it? Blah. And I have always been opposed to scripting and pre-crafting, because then I like to go off script. So then what's the point of having a script? But you guys already know your own story, right? So if you're telling your story, you lived it, you experienced it, it's in you. You only need exactly what Dennett said, like, who are you telling a story to? What do you want them to know, right? Like, what's the most valuable thing you could share for this group of people? And that's why I'm also opposed to like the scripted I help statements and things like that, because that's one way to say a thing to one person, right? Like, if you're talking to a different person in person, you would say it a different way. And so why in your digital appearance are you being a robot? Don't be a robot. Okay, Debbie, and then Dan.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to second what Terra said, actually, where, yeah, I don't script either. I just show up. And if you're passionate about something, and we are passionate about ourselves, that's why we're here. We're passionate about our stories. Only we can tell our stories the way they really are meant to be told. And so I think you just need to not craft a story, but just be passionate about who you are, where you are, and what you've done in your life. And that is enough of a story to engage anybody's attention.
Totally agree. Hit it, Dan.
So I just want to kind of touch on the question of the crafting the story, because obviously I'm not going to take back what I said, but I do want to make the distinction between crafting a story and then adjusting your attitude based on the conversation that you're having. So if you go in to meet with somebody that may be 60, 70 years old and you're having a conversation, you're going to be genuine, but at the same time, they may have a different line of reference as somebody that's 20 or 30. So once you're able to learn from them and build a rapport and identify, kind of get a gauge for who they are, then you can adjust your references in that respect. Like maybe you're not talking about Justin Bieber, but you're talking about Pat LaFontaine or, the Bee Gees, or like different things like that. And I just want to make note of that because, some people would consider that scripted. It's not scripted. It's just adjusting to your audience based on the rapport that you build. Thank you. I'm done.
No, I think that's a great point because it's still a reflection of who you are and what you know, right? So like, you can reference different things and tell different stories at different times. And I always use the example of if you were going to show up at a black tie wedding, you're going to show up as a specific version of you, right? Versus if you show up at a backyard barbecue in the summer, right? Like that doesn't mean your you is any different, right? But like the pieces of you that show up that day might be a different combination. And so there is freedom in knowing that, and there is space. And we didn't talk too much about like the digital space today, but in terms of making connections and all of these things that these wonderful panelists have shared with you guys today, all of these things are the same. If you're having a interaction with someone face-to-face at a networking event, if you're having an interaction with them on a Zoom meeting like this, if you're having an online chat on LinkedIn or Facebook, there's still an opportunity to connect as a human. There's still an opportunity to listen, right? You're read listening, but your listening is still the same. Are you actually taking in what people are telling you? I don't know how many people, I experience this all the time because I always ask people questions. They just ignore my questions and tell me what they want to say, right? I'm sure everybody has experienced this, right? Like this is your script, you're following your script, and like, I accept that about what's happening right now, but this isn't a conversation, right? Like, I'm trying to create a conversation, and I like having conversations. So I get into conversations, but that can happen in a bunch of different arenas, and having that space to show up from, this is me. How can I, like, what do I want to do today? If I'm going to connect with, because a lot of sales coaches will say like, just connect with 25 new people every day. You're like, oh, okay. Like pretty much anybody can do that, but not everybody can create 25 new relationships every day, right? And so when you think about it from that perspective, and I've actually seen people sharing about this on LinkedIn, which gets me very excited, is like, how much of a difference did you make with another human today? How many people did you connect to? That is way more important than the number of people who are your followers or who liked your post or any of the vanity metrics that exist on social media. It's about creating relationships with people. And so find your ways to connect with people and do it, you guys. Panelists, do you have anything else you would like to add before we wrap up for today?
Yeah, I just want to add one thing to that. I think it's ingrained in everyone to be connected with others, right? To have that strong personal connection, and I'm sure that's why people say, if you're giving a speech, a presentation, to tell a story, right? To kind of create a more personal human connection. So the more personal, raw, genuine, whatever word you want to use, the better for everyone involved. The better those connections will be. And not just connection like, hey, I've added one more connection to my LinkedIn profile, but someone that I can go to and say, hey, I need help, or a person in this field I can talk to, or whatever that is. So that was it. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thanks, Jim. All right, Dennett.
Tracy, I just wanted to say, Dan, I've crafted a story and I have it, right? And it's the story that I tell on every LinkedIn Live when they want to know my story. That's my story, right? It's I started in my banner, and I drive it straight through my entire LinkedIn profile. And so that's my story. And you may get a couple of more details or a couple less, a few less or a few more. But everyone asks me that story about, how did I start, why did I start, and what do I do? And that's that story. But I don't go into connections with that story. But so yeah, crafting the story, there's nothing wrong with it, Dan. I just wanted to say there's nothing wrong with it. I use my story and it is what it is. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody, any last words of wisdom? Debbie?
Just want to say that with all these connections we make, with all these people spread across the globe, we really are building what's called, I guess, social capital, because this is the kind of capital that is going to stand you in good stead in the future. Because I think it was Dan or Dennett said, you'll know who to go to when you have that problem or this problem, or who to refer somebody to because you met somebody. And I just think it's really important to increase our social capital.
And I have one more thing. So when I say diverse networks, I mean, that's exactly right. Like, I like to have people in all industries and all varieties of jobs, because I never know when I'm going to need to reach out to them for one thing or another. So I highly encourage you that, and again, when you're connecting with people across the world, and I do encourage you to do that because there's so many amazing, wonderful people that I have had the opportunity to meet, but you can make an impact. And the more that you can learn to collaborate and the more that you can come together, like, again, there's nothing that stops us in this world. And so for the future, we need to be able to connect on those really deep levels so that we can drive change ultimately.
So true, Tara. We could probably take that and do a whole other episode. Awesome. You got anything else to round us out with there, Dan?
Yeah, New York bagels are better than Canadian.
Well, yeah. You will get
It's
no
the
argument from me.
water.
You get no argument from me on that. Absolutely true. All right, you guys, this was so wonderful. Debbie, Dennett, Dan, Tara, all the D's except for Tara, and then Tracy. D's and T's today. Thank you guys so much for sharing your wonderful knowledge with us today. All of these wonderful panelists can be found very easily on LinkedIn. You guys definitely should do that. You should definitely check out Debbie's Fika Chats on Clubhouse, and I will as soon as they let Android users get on there. And thank you guys so much. We will have another episode coming up the first week of May. If you guys want to register, reach out to me and I can get you set up with the reminders so you don't have to stay on top of things. I really appreciate your time today. I appreciate you giving us a little bit extra time to get all of the possible nuggets we can out of these wonderful panelists. And I wish you guys a very, very happy Monday.